Can I go back to the candidacy hearing? One of the things at the very end was, if all this evidence is being presented and we have a board that's making a decision and it says that their decision is final no matter what, okay, why is the board, they never gave an explanation, a reasoning as to why they were voting the way that they did? Because
That's
you had them
interesting.
saying, yeah, they're saying like, hey, these people are not legitimate. 3 were removed as being contested, as legitimate, but on the petition, but they never gave the explanation to anyone as
Well,
to
it
why they were
concerns
doing
me.
it.
It concerns me anytime I see, officials going into executive session to
Yeah, right,
deliberate
right
something. They should have to do
beforehand. Yeah, I
that
agree.
publicly, and then we would know the reasoning and the rationale behind their decision.
Yeah,
The fact that we have appointed officials that believe it's okay for them to go in and deliberate things away from the public and then come out and render their decision, kind of like from on high up here, and the little peons should not be have access to their deliberations.
Well,
That
here's my
concerns me
question.
greatly.
Well, here's my question. There are only certain times you can go into an executive session. Is the state election board exempt from the Open Meetings Act or something so that they can? Because I don't remember anything in the Open Meetings Act that says you can just go into an executive session to debate something.
Well, if you go to the end of the video there, their lawyer, which they always have on hand, their lawyer gave them the statute by which she thought it was okay for them to enter executive session. We need to look at that statute, see
Yeah.
what it says, and then petition potentially the legislature to change it, should it need be, because these people are deliberating. There are 3
Yeah,
individuals, and they are
that's not right.
deliberating whether or not a person can be a candidate on a ballot for us to vote for our representation. And we should not have access to their deliberations on that. That
well,
greatly concerns me.
and at minimum, even if the executive session is allowed for them to go behind closed doors, right?
Right.
Why are they not giving the reason as to why they are making the ruling?
They should have to do that. They should absolutely have to do that and spell it out for the public when they come back in the ruling. The Supreme Court justices of the United States don't just issue a ruling.
Yeah,
There
that's
are
true.
pages and pages and pages and pages of explanations of why they are making the decision that they are made. So even our Supreme Court justices are not exempt from explaining the rationale of their decision making to the public. I do not know why there is any reason why appointed officials should be allowed to do this and then render an edict basically, and not give the public an explanation for it. These are our elections. These are our officials that will determine the laws that we all have to follow, right? So why we are not allowed to understand why they're going to, potentially not allow a candidate or throw people's names off a petition or whatever. There needs to be an explanation given. They have to be accountable to the public for that. And
Well,
the fact that they are not just blows my mind, to be honest
yeah.
with you.
Well, and here's my thing is, if when a candidate is filing and they have the option to do the petition or they have the option to pay the money. And as the libertarian candidate said, he's like, listen, like, this is the reason why I did it. It's really about, paraphrasing, civic engagement. And but he's like, not everybody has the money. Not everybody has the $500 to file. He's like, I have the $500 to file. So my thing is if by law, I don't know if this would be appropriate or not, but as a voter, I wouldn't have an issue with this. I don't think is that if there was some issues with contentions with the petition and there wasn't anything nefarious intentionally done with the voters, it was, everything's not laid out perfect. It wasn't ran perfect, but they, in their good faith, they did their best. It's so, to me, the state election board should have ruled, okay, sorry, based on what's being presented to us, we should not allow this petition to go forward. But you do have the option to pay the $500 if you would like to, because there was nothing nefarious, nothing that was intentionally done to keep you off. But then that also I still think we need to fix the issue with the petitions themselves and people knowing there's no good guidance. I think that's where the breakdown is, right? There's no good guidance from the county and from the state. The county really doesn't have a whole lot of authority in a lot of things. So and what do we know about a poorly ran business? It always comes from the top.
Well, and you know what you said too earlier about, again, something that I don't remember. But you had said something earlier about we need to, the bottom line is we've got to clean up the voter rolls. I mean, and then you said that the OAC, the Oklahoma Administrative Code, doesn't match the law. And it has to, it must. I mean, all the administrative code does is just illustrate, right? I mean, it just says, okay, here are the steps for you to follow this particular law. It can't say anything different than state law does. Right. So we have a couple of really big things. And then you said earlier about if the contest of candidacy, you don't know how many is it the district that you have to get? Is it just the county that you have to get? You said that was completely nebulous too. You couldn't really figure that out. So it seems to me that what we have going on here is
poorly written laws.
Yeah, it's everything seems to be at cross purposes, but then if you ask questions about it or you try to enlighten people about it, then like with Rick Moore, they'll have the sheriff come over and, check you out or whatever. Or
well, right. But what's happening to them, like, and we talked about this 2.5 months ago when we were on, is like what happens to the county and the state when they have a glitch in their system because it was an update, and then me, one of 3 people in our county, percent District 32, received 2 absentee ballots in my name.
Yeah.
What's happening? What's going on with that? The accountability is only on the people that are asking questions, but not to the state. And they just,
What, Amber, is it more of a law problem, or is it more like all this administrative code and there's no check and balance on these administrators and all these policies? I mean, what's the issue?
So I think sometimes, not always, the law itself is written poorly and could be written better. But the administrative code is by far the biggest problem, especially in this situation, because the law is talking about, the voters in the district. Then in the administrative code, it talks about the voters on the, the rolls basically, but then it talks about verifying signatures.
Who has to approve
those signatures in the election data warehouse to verify against?
Right.
Who is the person, or do the senators oversee the administrative code that's created from law? Because I know they do with rules, like they're making the big deal about, Superintendent Walters, well, you can't make your own rules and we're going to have to look at those or whatever. So I'm wondering, does the Senate or somebody needs to be looking at the Oklahoma Administrative Code and verifying it, cross-checking it with the law that it's intended to enumerate or illustrate?
Well, to me, that's the $1 million question. I know that I heard that there was I think a representative that was kind of looking at administrative laws and stuff. But, what I see time and time again is that the current and past legislators have given the authority to the state election board secretary to make rules, just given over full authority. Right. And so I don't know 100% because I've, sorry about that, but it seems to me that may be one way it's getting in, but it's a good question. How do we fix it? And what I also saw was that when they were reading the law and things in that video, that it's 1, 2, 3, not me on the state election board, because their hands always come out clean no matter what, because they have no responsibility, which I think is ludicrous. And that's the reason why this position in particular should not be an appointed position we, the people, should be able to elect it, right? It's just like our Secretary of State. We're one of the only states where it's not an electable position. It's just appointed. Why?
Right.
Well,
It always seems strange to me that we have an appointed official that oversees our elections, by which we elect officials to write the,
So he's never been through the process.
Constitutional, actually, but I would argue that their job is not to write laws. Their job is just to enforce the Constitution. That's my position. But as far as Rick is concerned, the issue, I just want everybody, number one, you need a copy of your Oklahoma Constitution. Go get one. But Rick's issue to me, and I think it's very troubling, if everybody would just understand Article 2, Section 22 of the Oklahoma Constitution. I'm going to read it to you, and everybody needs to memorize this, okay? Liberty of speech and press. Truth and as evidence and prosecution for libel. That's a slash, okay, because it goes for both. Every person may freely speak, write, or publish his sentiments on all subjects, being responsible for the abuse of that right, and no law shall be passed to restrain or abridge the liberty of speech or of the press. Period. He can write, he can speak, he can publish on anything he wishes. And the fact that he chose, to share something on a chat, there was information that people in election integrity would need to know. And that is, guess what? We're allowed to pick up these machines and everything else the day before. Why would the election board be worried about that? Because
why isn't that public knowledge?
That is public knowledge. The way we handle our elections, transparent to the public. Everything that we do, every process, transparent to the public. Just because there's something that may be questionable, that the public may actually want to have more information about or learn more about, that is in no way should they be worried about that. So the fact that they are waving around a social media post, by the way, it was True Social, that I made regarding this, and I make many posts, of course, regarding Oklahoma elections. There's no reason. I mean, sometimes I wonder if I live rent free in people's heads. If people are watching my social media, that's fine. That is a space I suppose I occupy in some people, but that makes me wonder why. All they have to do is answer the question. That's all they have to do. I don't know why they wouldn't just answer and say, "Hey, Rick, this is why we do this," or "Hey, could you explain this to people?" Or, "Hey, there's something there." I called the state election board when I saw that to verify and double check that was allowed. It is allowed. It's allowed. So it's an allowed procedure. So why are they worried about it? And why is a sheriff's deputy talking to Rick more about something that's allowed?
Well, and let me make a point about what happened to me. I mean, let's make the point about what happened to me. So I say, hey, this isn't happening. You're not following the law. I tell legislators about it. I post it on my, on our website, and then, I get fired. And now, and don't forget, I get fired for producing misinformation. That was one of the things, was me producing misinformation.
And referred for investigation
about what's going on.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And referred for investigation. You get referred for investigation, but all you did was point out where you had concerns that the law was not being followed. And that is concerning to me. And I wrote up a Substack for Restore Liberty Oklahoma on that. I believe I also refer to it in the most current publication that would probably take an hour or two to go over anyway, on the data from 2022. We have situations in the state where there is a very real attempt to silence people. Obviously, they don't know me. So there's a very real attempt to silence people when it comes to our elections. And everybody knows that without free and fair elections, there is no way that we can determine the consent of the governed. And we all unfortunately know what that means, according to Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. That is a very real problem. We have to be able to speak. We have to be able to ask questions, and we have to be able to have those questions answered without the authorities coming down on our heads.
Well, and let me even make this
real quick. I was just going to say that I did find it encouraging that the governor's task force did say, what was troubling to me was they had to have a lawyer tell them this, but they cannot write any legislation against people looking into election integrity. We are using our First Amendment rights, and they are not allowed constitutionally to pass any legislation that silences us.
But I'm going to point out one more thing. This is coming from the federal level. I mean, go search it, go reach it, go election misinformation. Go look at what's coming down from the Biden administration. And our state election board is buying onto this, apparently. I mean, I don't see how they're not, if they're doing what they have been doing. So I think that's another part. Why are we listening to that? Why is that happening in Oklahoma?
Right. Well, and that, that's what I talked about. Terry and I discussed. I'm sorry, Michael.
Well, no, I was just going to make a point real quick, Amber. Back on Jenni, your deal with the election board. Let's not forget that they immediately went into executive session for like 8 hours. Yeah. I mean, you're not an employee. There was nothing to protect personal record there. I mean, that entire conversation should have been had in front of all of us that were there at that meeting, which was completely cowardice in every single capacity, in my opinion. Just like I said, I was standing right at the doors. They all walked out. Not one of them would look me in the eyes. They all had their heads down. They all just scurried out right into their little protective state back there behind executive session, in just complete. I'm not even going to say it. But.
I don't know about you, but I want
access to the minutes of executive session.
Wait, hold on a second. Amber, go ahead.
I want people that are going to be working in any capacity in our government of any sort, of any level. I want them to be confident and stand tall and be able to look the people in the eye. Like when you hang your head or you won't look somebody in the eye, then you're ashamed or guilty of something.
Now what, Wendi?
I was just saying, it seems to me, as Amber and I were discussing earlier, about the executive session and the minutes, and not giving reasons and rationale to the public for their decisions. I would like to see the minutes of that executive session where they determined that you and Cheryl were, that there were things going on that needed to be referred for investigation. That's very serious. If you are going to come out in public and tell people that you are referring people for investigation, you had better explain to the public your rationale and your reasons for doing so. And that was not done at all. They just announced, this is what we're doing. We're referring it for investigation. This is our decision. See you later. After that marathon session where some of us stayed there all day, I am one of those, because I wanted to see what exactly they were going to decide.
Well, and let me make a point, because we're going to have to close off here in a little bit, but let me make a point that I know everybody is going to agree with here. So, Amber, you've said, hey, here's the problem, we need to, and Wendi, you both have said, hey, we need to do this. We need to just clear the rolls off. Let's go ahead and get everybody back on. And Eric Roberts, I think, has helped you run a bill like that, right? Hasn't he?
Actually, it was Sean Roberts.
Oh, Sean Roberts.
Okay. The one that ran the bill, and was that 2021?
2022.
2022. Yeah. And it died.
Okay. So, but here's the thing. And with me, I said, okay, here's exactly how you're not following the Oklahoma Administrative Code. Here's exactly how you're not following Title 26. I'm writing it down for you so that you know. You would think that these people would go, oh my gosh, well, hold on a minute, Jenni. Let's go look at this and see if we can figure out what's going wrong. Right. And let's see if we can figure out a way to make that stop. You would think that they would be happy for somebody to tell them, hey, look, this is a problem. We found this out. But instead of being happy about it, instead of being inclusive of the people that they lord over, instead of, any of that, they push back, they shove back, they accuse us of election interference. They fire me for saying, using my First Amendment right and saying what was going on. That should be the biggest concern that everybody should have from the get-go. These people don't want our help, the citizens' help, to do a better job. They just want to push back and shove back. That's a huge issue.
Yeah.
It is. And the thing is we have huge, number one, we've had a voter apathy forever, for a very long time. And by the states, more than just Oklahoma, but when the states are not 100% transparent with the people and finding a path to give that transparency and that truth, and just admitting when some things haven't gone right and saying this is how we are going to fix it. And when they know that there's people out there that care about the people and their right to vote, and is it secure enough? And yes, Oklahoma may be one of the most secure voting states in the nation on voting, but it's not perfect, and there are ways to fix it so that we don't go down the path of the other states. And so if you want voters to trust the state with our vote, you have got to allow us to be a part of the conversation, especially those people that are very analytical minded and can come in and fix things. I'm not great at starting something from nothing, but I am wonderful at coming in and analyzing something and knowing how to fix it.
And I think we need to end it there, because that is absolutely, completely on point. I mean, you just summed everything up. And Wendi, I know, hit your blog up again, because we didn't get a chance to go over the information in your new blog, but you had a lot of good information there. So just give us a 2-minute rundown on it, and let people know where they can go to find it.
Okay, it's loaded. It's on Substack. It's substack.restorelibertyoklahoma.com, I believe, is the website. If you have a Substack account, if you don't have one, you can sign up for one for free, and you can go in and read a lot of people's Substacks. But this latest one, I fulfill a promise that I've made to several groups, and I finally decided to write up the analysis on the 2022 primary election. There is very questionable data that came out of that from the state election board website in real time as the results were being reported by the state election board. We have numbers in the absentee ballot counts that are supposed to be fixed from the get-go. You get absentee ballot count numbers at the beginning of the night for the election. Those are fixed. Those never changed. And I've actually collected data from subsequent elections, and those numbers do not change. However, in June of 2022, within an hour's time frame, they changed twice, and then they changed again by the end of the final count. So just barely changed that time. But it's interesting. I just wrote up the analysis, and I bring up the fact that we have people that are entrusted with investigating themselves regarding Oklahoma elections, the people on the governor's task force. And I would argue that task force was unconstitutional, because the governor doesn't have anything to do with the election board according to the Constitution. So why is the governor appointing this task force? You can't, if you want the governor to be involved, you have to change the Constitution. The state legislature cannot write any law that allows them to do that without changing the Constitution. So anyway, the governor's task force was full of people that have been involved in Oklahoma elections for years. That, this whole system, the way it was set up, that's concerning to me. I would like an independent board of people to come in from out of the state, and come in and look into our elections. At this point, I was waiting. The reason why I held on to this data is because I was waiting for anyone in the state of Oklahoma in an official capacity to show interest in investigating the actual data that groups like Oklahoma Liberty Watch and Oklahoma Liberty Integrity Group, which, I'm part of, all of the data and all of the analysis that we have made over the past 3 years, no one has bothered to look into that unless they've had people planted into the presentations, which is which is possible. We don't have election board members. We don't have people coming in and sitting in. We have very few lawmakers. When they do and they see what it actually is, they are very concerned. But then they go up to the Capitol and talk about other people. It's like, oh no, we were told that that's not true. So, we'll just move along here. This is what we get. So I finally decided it was time to, after waiting, like I said, it's been 2 years almost, for someone to look into this. No one has. So I went ahead and published and analyzed the data. So yes, Amber.
Well, I want to say, as you're talking, I'm thinking, I really appreciate this candidacy, contested candidacy, because we learned a lot from it. And I appreciate the state election board for it being heard, because now we have precedents that anybody can pull the voter rolls from election data warehouse. It can be used in a lawful means by any citizen.
Right. And that's important. So when you get into the election data warehouse, you can get in and you can check out all kinds of things. And if you go to the state election board, I find it heartening. They do publish their the election data, and they do it in real time. So anybody can do what I do, and that is go in throughout election night and download the results. They give that to you. Now, the concern is, of course, with the numbers changing, they're not supposed to change. And nobody wants to talk to the people that have actually been analyzing the data for some reason. The data can tell a story that people need to look at. So when we talk about elections in Oklahoma being the safest, most secure, well, if they are, that's... it's like I'd hate to see other states, I suppose, because from what we've seen, especially with the voter rolls, and then with this data changing, it's we have serious problems that need to be addressed, and it's being ignored or swept under the carpet, or people, if they don't listen, they can always say that they weren't told, right?
Correct.
So people do not want to take responsibility and stand up and say, we really need to fix this. We keep getting excuses as to why it can't be done. And by the way, Eric Roberts' office did tell me a concern about the National Voter Registration Act. They believe there's a concern there legally with re-registering Oklahomans. I don't see it personally. There is a judge's order or out of the state of Kansas, but it was never challenged in the Supreme Court. It doesn't mean the Supreme Court refused to hear it. Doesn't mean there was wrong. I want to know why Oklahomans and our legislators are giving authority to the federal government when we're supposed to. Yeah, exactly. So Oklahoma is not shy about having constitutional arguments, right? Oklahoma is not shy about passing legislation that may be controversial with the federal government. Write the legislation, do it, have it done, and then argue it in court if you need to. But I do not see how the court case they are citing actually applies to the re-registration of Oklahomans.
Well, and it's not even, even over and above that.
Right.
Stop. Elections are supposed to be solely the responsibility of the states. And why are we even allowing the federal government to stick their neck into any of this stuff? Why don't we have legislators who are going, no. See, this is Oklahoma. We'll do it our way.
Right. And there are a couple of things that the Supreme Court has upheld is the federal government's concern when it comes to elections. But voter registration is not one of them. They have stated over and over again that's the purview of the states. And our legislature can't ignore our state constitution. And this was just a ruling this last summer. Legislature cannot ignore the Constitution when writing those laws.
Well, so, and in regards to the voter registration, so there's two ways people can register to vote. They can use a national voter registration card that they can download or obtain, right? But when it gets sent in, it goes to the appropriate state. So I don't like that that there's a national one, but it's
Right.
not the federal government that's inputting voters, or it
Right.
should not be, right?
Correct.
Right.
It's
Right.
the states that have control of that. So why in the world is the federal government have their hands in it, and the state is supposed to be paying for all of the elections, and the counties within the state pay for the elections? Why are we taking money from the federal government to pay for any election in the state of Oklahoma?
We
They're
can't.
taking the money for new machines that Oklahoma is going to get at some point. Like, there's so many different things.
Right. The Help America Vote Act, by the way, is a program. Everyone needs to understand this. When they sit there and cite the Help America Vote Act as federal law, it is a program. We don't have to participate. The reason why it's a program is because they cannot tell us how to run our elections. And according to our Constitution, we cannot take any outside money for Oklahoma elections. The Constitution says free.
Correct.
That is unfettered, that is uninterfered with from anything out of state. So the Zuckerberg money that came in 2020, unconstitutional. Any private money coming in from out of the state, unconstitutional. Help America Vote Act money coming into the state, unconstitutional. So
here's the thing.
have this,
we need brave, bold legislators in our state. And if you are not brave and bold, and you can be maneuvered and pitted against one another, and it's not in the best interest of the people, get out.
Yeah.
Get out, and we don't want you representing us.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think that's the problem, because Wendi said something when we got on this morning originally, and I was talking about reading Brave New World. In so many of these systems are completely corrupt because they do the same stuff that you just talked about. I mean, the state election commission, that the governor wanted to put in to talk about the kind of elections that we have, it was all the same people. It was all the people in the government. There's never any outside people. They never allowed me to come in and talk about dark money. They never allowed Amber to come in and talk about, what she found in her county. They never allowed you to come in and talk about Hava money. So it doesn't even matter, because all of this is just the tail chasing the dog, and the people always get left out of it.
That's right. And even if I never contacted someone asking, hey, can I participate? We know by what the state election board has presented, or the Secretary of Elections has presented at OCP, at OCPA and stuff like that, right? That he is well aware of the individuals working in this state that have questions.
Oh, yes. And let me say this, because
reach out to us.
Because I can do this for a fact. So when I was doing my training at the state election board, we finished with the actual training, and then we got a 4-color packet of information, of paper, and it was like that thick, and it was done in 4-color. Would you like to know what it was? It was snapshots of social media posts that they didn't like.
Yeah, they were attacking free speech.
And even though trained on those, oh, tisk, you people out there talking about Oklahoma elections.
Well, and let's not forget how all the public comment is completely shut down. Wendi, did you get a chance to make any comments when we were in that hearing for Jenni? No.
No, and that was really hard for me.
Yeah, they didn't allow any kind of comment whatsoever. And we see that across the board. I mean, look at these school board meetings. Hardly any public comment. If you get off course, they shut you down. Then they go disappear behind executive session. Same thing with city councils. I mean, it's just a joke. We've got to be able to speak in a public forum type of setting in order to get something done.
Right. And I find it interesting that out of, if I stood up and gave the information that we've gathered at Oakleg in the complete presentation, I've narrowed it down to 30 minutes, but the complete presentation, it's an hour over that long. And the fact that they have one of my social media posts in that packet you were talking about, Jenny. One, and they're talking about fires. That is so easy for me to explain. My brother was a fireman for 20 years, retired. Anytime fires are mentioned regarding any subject, I find it fascinating and I want to look into it and see if there's anything to it. But that was an aside. And I would always tell the people when I gave the presentation, it's like, this is just a weird situation we got going on. We don't know what it means, but my brother's a
Wendi,
fireman.
So then who's really spreading misinformation, disinformation? It's not the people.
Jenny, try it right here. It's Jenny.
I know it's crazy, but out of 2 hours worth of actual data, this is what they choose to tell people my presentation's about. So I find that hilarious because the secretary of the election board, Mr. Ziriak, was invited to come to my presentation in Kay County by their county election board official there. He absolutely refused. And then he didn't send anyone else from the state election board. So, you know, I can't explain that except to say that maybe they just don't want to know, or they would have to do something about it. You know,
well, but you know, here's the thing: when you are in a position, and this is kind of the definition of a tyrant. A tyrant isn't interested in what the people has to say. Yeah. The tyrant isn't interested in getting help or assistance from the people over whom he sees. He's not interested in that. He's interested in dictating, dictate this, dictate that, dictate this. And unfortunately, I think in a number of levels in Oklahoma state government, we have just engendered tyrants. These people have never been pushed back against. They don't like it. It irritates them because they should know everything and we're just the peons they represent. I mean, it is literally to the point where I don't know how you can't call some of these people tyrants.
Yeah. Well, if they are going into executive session and don't think that they need to release the minutes or the rationale for the decisions that they are making,
just transparency.
I would find it very difficult to argue with that, Jenny. I would not be able to defend or argue that point at all. Yeah. It's very concerning that this is what is happening. And this is the way people are treated when they come in and they point out information. And all it does is make people more suspicious. It does not tamp anything down. It does not stop any controversy. All it does is it fuels it. And that is something that they need to be aware of. And with the tools that we have and the Constitution that we have and that we know, and we know what our, you know, inherent rights are as spelled out in the Constitution, it's just going to continue. Nobody's going anywhere. I don't think Amber's going anywhere. I don't think I'm going anywhere. Jenny, you're not going anywhere. Michael's not going anywhere. We're going to keep having these conversations, and I'm going to keep writing up Substacks regarding Oklahoma elections. And I'm also writing up a series right now on a nexus between elections, cartels, and mineral deposits. I mean, there is so much that's going on that people need to be aware of.
Well, you guys, and Oklahoma is not much different than the state of Oregon or the state of California. It really isn't. When you look at the grand scheme of things and how things are being run, you're just saying Oregon and California, you know, are states that are liberal leaning, right? Well, they're saying that Oklahoma is the most conservative state, you know, on paper, you know, in the nation. But really, so what's the commonality causing them to be similar?
Well, and I'm even going to jump on the top of that and say we have tried for 3 years to get school board elections moved to the November election.
Right.
You would think that if anybody gave a rat's butt about the lip service that they continually get on their stump speeches to get reelected, you would have thought that would have happened in the first 15 minutes. But no. They'll put something else out there and they'll pat us on the head. Well, we gave you the grocery tax. Thank you so much for those $2. That's awesome. What about my property? You still own my property. What about that?
Well, and I want, and you see all these bills, things being passed. Where's the elimination of bills? Because all that's happening in Oklahoma
100%.
specific is that they are taking more and more from the people and silencing us more and more. It's just absurd.
Yeah, they're trying to, Senate Bill 481, where we're hiding election officials behind this non-harassment or whatever.
Yeah.
That the other officials, not the state representatives apparently, or the senators, because Senator Jessica Garvin was in her committee meeting kind of saying, oh, I wish we were behind this, because somebody on the committee, there was a bill being debated in her committee, and they were talking about the journalists, whether or not they were going to put the journalists behind that wall as well. And somebody on the committee made the comment that, oh, well, us representatives and senators or whatever should be behind that too. And she said, oh yeah, absolutely, I wish we were, something like that. I'm paraphrasing it, but I was thinking in my head, who are we electing here? People that literally want to be not accountable to the people for things that the people don't like that they may be doing. Never mind that the people are the ones that give the Constitution authority that then makes the legislature. It's like the people are up here, guys. We're not down here. We're up here. So, the legislators are kind of down here too. But if you want to be hidden from the people, why are you doing things that are against their wishes? You're supposed to be representing them. Why would you think that you would get like a mob of people harassing you or bothering you? That should tell you something. Yeah. Maybe you need to address their concerns.
You guys, there's a lot going on, and my last little piece with this is, Senator Chris Kidd. It's recently come to light, Senate District 31. He was reelected in, what was that, 2020?
Yeah.
And funny, at minimum, he's been living out of district since 2018. He just happens to own a home that he doesn't live inside the district. And legislators knew about it. Other legislators.
It's just mind-blowing, the things that we get into. And as we go along and continue watching our legislators, what we hear. And by the way, just so you know, Jack Stewart in Canadian Academy, I love this guy. He actually dropped re-registration of Oklahomans again this year. He took Sean Roberts' bill and he dropped it. And it went into the committee he co-chairs with Jessica Garvin. But anyway, that bill never was heard in the committee. So re-registration was dropped again this year by Jack Stewart, to try to get everybody re-registered again, have to give photo ID in order to get the registration or something, or prove that you're a citizen to get the registration. And the excuses I heard from people were the same. Well, we can't because this judge in Kansas, we might run into problems here. I'm like, since when has Oklahomans been afraid of controversy? Number one, but number two, I don't think it applies. And number three, why are you so easily put off of doing what needs to be done? It's just astonishing to me, but it never came out of the committee. It was attempted again this year, and it was never even heard.
Well, we're going to have.
Well, real quick, I know we're getting ready to close up, but I wanted to have Amber just reiterate from that first podcast, Amber, when you were on, it was one of the larger elections, maybe the 2020 election, when you said there was, I can't remember the exact number, but just the incomplete registration dates on those rolls. It was like in 50,000 or 60 or 100.
Yeah. So what that was April, I think it's April. After every presidential election, mind-blowing is when the voter rolls are cleaned up, and they're not cleaned up, to the extent that we would think they would be cleaned up. And from the data that was pulled after it was cleaned up, data pulled from July of 2021, 207,000 registered voters in the state of Oklahoma. Now that's active and inactive voters. but they're on the rolls, and you're just like, no registration dates at all. So the ones that did vote within the last, several years, within the last 10 years, tell me how they're a valid elector and why their vote should have counted.
Wow. I mean, I just want people to understand how big that number is. I mean, that's literally just under 8% of the population of Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, right. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. In this particular this race, that was contested, right, for the candidate, House District 66, as of April 21st, 2024, 810 registered voters in House District 66 do not have voter registration dates.
Right.
Why?
Right. Well, and that begs the other question too. You said they went into executive session to talk about why they weren't going to, allow Hayes to stay on the ballot or whatever. But the bottom line is, shouldn't they have said at that point in time, well, somebody should have said those aren't even valid electors because there's not even a date that they registered. You can't even consider them.
People don't know the law.
They don't know the law. They haven't been analyzing the data as much as we have, necessarily. You may have people that are great, and I'll plug in the libertarian chair, kind of the commonality between himself. He doesn't know us, but himself, Wendi, and I, is we are all very intrigued with genealogy. And I've been doing it for almost 30 years as well, like the chair. And the reason why that's important, that may fall on people that don't have an understanding or enjoy that, is somebody that does genealogy has an analytical mind. You have to go in and collect the puzzle pieces and put them together and analyze information to make sure you have the correct person, because there's many people with different names, etc. So, fun fact.
Right. Yeah,
well,
and you've got to.
Okay, I'm going to stop us right now because we're almost at 2 hours. We've got people that I know. We don't get the four of us together. We'll never get off.
Right.
But I honestly, ladies, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. And I know, and we have had Hayes for U.S. House on today, who's been watching. And he said at one point, boy, sure, I'm glad you guys are handling this stuff. This stuff sure isn't my strong suit. So, I do appreciate you guys doing that, because it is true. I'm a biologist. I'm not a mathematician, so I can observe all day long, but numbers and me are not always best friends. So I really appreciate you guys doing this. And thank you as always for being on with us. And we will have you on again. It's an absolute. So thank you guys.
And Rick,
thank you guys.
And Rick too, who's still in the green room. God love him, who's been watching the whole time. So I'm going to let you go for now, guys, but we will talk more on this later. And thank you again for all that you do. You're just a blessing.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, you too. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, gosh, I hated to get them off, but my goodness, it's hard for people to stay on an hour, let alone 2 hours. But that was a phenomenal broadcast.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, the issues are rampant. I mean, someone's got to expose them. They're not coming from anywhere else. I mean, we've got to write them up. We've got to be, we've got regular lives. We've got families, but we've got to be citizen journalists on top of it. We have to research this stuff. We have to publish this stuff. We have to stay on it, because like I've always said, Jenny, no one's coming to save us. We have to do it. We, the people, have to do it. The government's not going to do it. There's no white hat, conspiracy in the background waiting to help us. I mean, we have to do this ourselves and just stay on it.